What is up, everyone? Phil here. Welcome to DSPReacts, and welcome to another horror movie review. I'm going to be doing at least one horror movie review a week over the course of October 2023, if not more, time permitting. You know, it's really more about me having the time to sit down, formulate my thoughts, and film this review than watch the movies. And continuing on with the pattern of classic horror movie series that have been rebooted, tonight I'm going to review Scream 5, or as they called it last year in 2022 when it was originally released, just Scream. And much like a lot of horror series that tried to reboot the series with just the original name, it can definitely cause some confusion. Scream was a really awesome horror movie that came out in the 1990s, and the reason that it was so unique is because it was meta before we even knew what that meant. It broke the fourth wall. Essentially, in the movie, the characters were self-aware of how horror movies work and established a set of rules on how to survive or how to do really irresponsible things and essentially get murdered quick. The movie was unique because it had twists and turns in the plot. You didn't really know who the killers were. It wasn't cliche like other horror movies where you know, okay, that's Jason or that's Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger. You had a mystery killer. And the whole movie was a whodunit, pointing fingers at, you know, who actually is the murderer. And at the end, through a lot of gore and a lot of death, twist ending, pretty cool. And it really kind of started a whole new idea of what the classic slasher horror movie should be. Well, the Scream franchise went on to have 3 movies in its original trilogy over the next, I think it was like 5 or 6 years, that all did pretty good at the box office. But at the end of the third one, people realized it was time to kind of wrap up that plot. They tried to revive the series in 2011 with Scream 4. And when Scream 4 came out, man, did it get hit with a lot of backlash and criticism. Mostly because the movie had really kind of thrown away a lot of the established lore and tropes that was part of the series all along. It had a new lead. Instead of Sidney Prescott, the girl from that hometown who was always stalked by this ghost-faced killer, it was someone new. The characters weren't as interesting, nor did many of them have really interesting ties to the original cast. That was one of the cool things about the original Scream trilogy, is that you had these recurring characters. You know, Dewey, who was the deputy in town who ends up trying to stop the killer and gets thwarted at every turn. The news reporter Gail Weathers, who is continuously covering the story of the Ghostface killer and keeps getting sucked into the realm of it. Of course, Sydney and her whole family, who get pulled into it repeatedly. You never knew if the Ghostface is one of her family members or not, as well as other supporting characters along the way. Well, Scream 4 really threw it on its head. Now, without spoiling, basically, people did not like who the killer was in Scream 4. I saw Scream 4 around 2011, 2012. I, too, thought it was absolutely ridiculous. Now, not to say that the Scream movies are hyper-realistic by any means, but at the same time, they follow lines of logic. And if you've been following the lines of logic of Scream up to that point, Scream 4 didn't really make sense. Let's put it that way. So after Scream 4 was essentially hit with tons of criticism and saying, wow, they really ran this franchise into the ground, I wish they never revived it, it's now been 11 years since they made a Scream movie. 2011 all the way to 2022. So when Scream 5 came out, what they announced was that it was going to be a return to form. One of these new series, rebooted. See, it's Scream, not Scream 5. But it is still the continuation of the plot line of the original 4 movies. Much like the original movies, this movie is very meta and very fourth wall breaking. Once again, the characters in the movie know that essentially they're in a horror movie. In fact, one of the running parodies that have been going on throughout the Scream franchise is that there's a movie series called Stab in the movie that's representative of what's happening in real life after the fact, which is weird. Imagine if you were in Friday the 13th and there was something called Hockey Mask Killer playing at the movie theater, where the hockey mask killer was outside named Jason Voorhees killing some people in the street. That's essentially what happens in the Scream franchise. So when they announced that they were going to reboot it, I think a lot of people were skeptical. I didn't see this last year. I actually just saw it for the first time the other night. I don't want to spoil much of the plot, but I will say some generalities. If you're interested in this movie, I'm going to do my best to not spoil it for you, because I feel that the intricacies of the whodunit plot in Scream movies is one of the best parts about it. It's why I like these movies, because I'm always interested in trying to guess who the killer is. But I am going to give you some general plot points. For example, there is a new protagonist. There is a new family of people intertwined with the ghost-faced killer, and it's not Sidney Prescott and her group of friends. It's a whole new, family of people. A girl at the beginning of the movie is attacked, and then her sister, who lives out of town, is kind of forced back into town to see what the heck's going on with her sister, who was just attacked by the ghost-faced killer, and it pulls you into this big entanglement. Who did it? Was it one of the girl's friends? Is it something else going on? Come to find out, in a very general way, long story short, the whole goal here is to get the whole Ghostface thing going up again, okay? So, who is Ghostface? Why is Ghostface killing people in this town again? What is the relationship? Is there even a relationship, or is it a total stranger? Over the course of the movie, it's interesting because I'd say the entire first, 2/3 of the movie is all about new characters, right? These two sisters, one of which was attacked, and why they're being attacked, and then their friends and stuff like that. Over the course of the movie, more people start to be murdered. But why are they being murdered? What's the motive? That's part of the whodunit mystery. Now, this already is known publicly, so I'm not spoiling much here. I mean, you can look at the poster for yourself. Some of the original characters from the original Scream movies are in this. Dewey, Gale Weathers, and Sidney Prescott are all in the movie. They're pulled back into this web. Dewey is recruited by the newcomers as an expert on what's going on, basically trying to get him to help them figure out who the killer is and stop it. Sidney and Gale Weathers really don't want to be part of it, but they get pulled in other different ways into the web. The movie has a lot of meta stuff. Again, fourth wall breaking. A lot of the characters are actually either relatives or friends or in relation to previous characters from the series. And there's even some other returning supporting characters, not as big as those big three I mentioned, that are in it. And definitely this movie has stakes and consequences. And what I will say is, without spoiling again, actual returning major characters do die. Okay? That's huge. In a lot of these movie series, everyone seems to be safe, right? How many horror movie series have returning characters? Oh, I don't care. They're going to be fine by the end of the movie. Not in this one. And that's an interesting spin, because it means that it's actually more interesting when no one has plot armor, okay? I will say this, the new cast is interesting and good. And I will actually say this as well. Sadly, some of the returning characters, I feel, just aren't up to it anymore, or don't do a very good job. I'll give you some examples here, okay? Dewey. His character actually has a really great plot line in this movie, and I feel is actually probably the best character. I was happy to see him back and to see him essentially take on almost like a hero role in the movie. But the characters of Gale Weathers and Sidney Prescott, honestly, they don't really do much. By the time that they come back into the movie's plot, they're just like extra bodies to be put in the way of the killer. They don't really do much. They don't have many intelligent thoughts or ideas of how to stop the killer. They're just there because they're there. And even at the end of the movie, as you see everyone else acting around them, you can tell that these actresses, Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox, really haven't done this recently. They don't really do a very good job, honestly. Like I said, they kind of look like mannequins standing around. They don't look scared. They don't act. I mean, their acting in the previous movies was leaps and bounds above anything that they did in this movie. I'm not sure what happened and why they didn't prepare them to kind of jump back into these roles. I think they could have done a much better job. Overall, I really liked the movie, although there are some pet peeves and annoyances that I will mention. But overall, it feels like a return to form. Unlike Scream 4, where so many new characters were thrown at you, and it really didn't feel like there were stakes because these are all new characters you don't care about. In this one, because you have the combination of returning characters as well as new characters, and there are interesting ties between them. Again, without spoiling, there are direct connections between the new cast and the old cast, and it's interesting to see that because it kind of ties the two movies or franchises, or I should say the two plot lines together. And that was neat to see that. And I will definitely say this, okay? I think they needed to do this because if they once again did Scream 5, okay, we're going back to basics. We're going to bring back the original cast and it's only about them again. I do feel like it wouldn't have been as interesting. At some point, you need to move on from the past, and it was cool to see a whole new group of protagonists kind of picking up the reins for where this franchise is going to go in the future. And unlike Scream 4, it wasn't just people there for the sake of being there because they're being stalked by Ghostface. These people have ties to the original plot lines of the original movies, and that's a good thing. But, once again, ridiculous things in these movies that you kind of have to suspend your disbelief. So, I'm just going to give you 2 examples as general as I can without spoiling the plot. There's one situation where someone calls the cops and says, you need to come to this house right away because everyone's at risk. Then there proceeds to be like a 10 to 15 minute scene where the cops don't show up. Where were they? You know? And, you know, oh my God, bloody murder. Everyone converge on this house. Where are the cops? They take so long. Of course they're too late to help, right? And then there's another situation where there's supposed to be someone under a protective custody, yet somehow, of course, the killer gets to them. How? I don't know. And then there's another scene, and this is really ridiculous, and if I explained the full reason why this scene is ridiculous, it would kind of spoil. But let me just put it this way. The killers in these movies are kind of superhuman for a while, but then at the end when it's revealed who they are, it's supposed to be like realistic. Here's why. In the first movie, the reason why you believe that Ghostface was able to do what they did is because it's 2 nutjob guys who maybe are hopped up on drugs. It kind of makes sense. Okay, these kids are kind of nuts. Maybe they're just out of their minds. They're doing drugs or whatever, and that's why they were able to pull this crap off. In this movie, there's a scene where the killer gets injured, and then it's never addressed for the rest of the movie, as if it never happened. Huh? You blatantly were hurt in the scene. You could see it happen, and then it's like it never had, you know, the killer's never happens later on, like it's just forgotten. And that I didn't like that's a plot hole. Sorry, the killer should be injured. At least they should be giving away an indication that they were hurt. Nothing. It's perfectly fine. Like were they Wolverine with a healing factor? It doesn't really make much sense. And then later on, of course, as you know, there's always a reveal of who the character is, or the killer is, and I'll just put it this way, it's a little confusing because it doesn't really make sense to some of the other stuff that happened earlier in the movie. That's all I'm going to say. Some of you will understand if you've seen the movie or if you're going to see the movie. Again, I don't want to spoil the whole plot for you guys. But overall, I still found it highly enjoyable, I should say. Even with the things that were like, you know, again, when you go into a movie like this, you have to suspend your disbelief. But at the same time, it's kind of a cop-out, especially a whodunit, where you're trying to guess who's the killer, and at the end, you're like, oh, now how did that make sense? It doesn't, right? So that kind of got me. But at the same time, I really liked the movie. But here's the thing. This was the reboot, right? This was the one where they brought back Sydney, they brought back Gale, they brought back Dewey. There was other returning characters as well that aren't even probably on this poster. Will the next one, Scream 6, which just came out this year, have returning characters again? Do you want to know the truth? I don't think it should. I think it was nice to see them back, but man, like I said, especially with some of the bad acting of Neve Campbell and Courtney Cox really not fitting into the roles and kind of just being extra bodies or mannequins rather than having any kind of real emotion. I didn't feel it from them at all. And I get it, the nostalgia factor. This was the movie to tie the original plot to a new plot so that it could continue on. I'm okay with that. But now I'd actually like to see this series of movies continue on with the new cast rather than keep going back to the tropes of the old cast members. So I hope that happens. I hope they do the right thing moving forward. Overall, I liked it. If you're a fan of the original Scream movies, you're going to like this. If you didn't see the original ones and you see this movie, you'll have no idea what's going on. You absolutely need to know who the characters are to understand the context of what's going on in this movie. And, you know, a lot of people also, I feel, probably would have issue with the ending. All right? Like the actual identity of the killer and why the killer kills. I didn't have much issue with it because I'm so used to horror movies. But I think if people are looking for, like, concrete stuff, you may be a little upset. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they're just trying to go for what was in the first movie. Because, again, I think everyone's seen Scream 1 at this point. And basically the killer's motives at the end of the first movie are kind of ridiculous. They're actually not very logical. In this movie, there is supposed to be logic behind it. But then it's, let me put it this way, it's just not the best reason. So, I don't know. I think some people might have issue with that. I liked it still. I really liked it. As a reinvigoration of the franchise, I think it went in the right direction. And I'm very curious now to see the next one from this year. Because that one came out within like a year of the one before. They put that together fast, right? So I'm curious, does it live up to how good Scream 5 was? Or is it way, way worse now that I guess these former cast members are no longer in it? So Scream 5, I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I certainly didn't hate it. It is way better than Scream 4. Scream 4, I did not like at all. This movie, I was enjoying. I think that they had some love and attention to the original characters and original plots with those callbacks. That's why they did them. I do hope that they move on from that now in the future, but I did enjoy it, and I'm actually very intrigued in Scream 6 now that I've seen Scream 5. If you haven't seen Scream in a long time, this is a good one to jump back into. You can even skip 4. I just find it funny. I'm not even kidding you. In the movie, they outright are making fun of Scream 4, but not really. They're making fun of the latest Stab movie. And they're saying, oh, you see, the protagonist sucks and the killer sucks. It's hilarious. They're making fun of their own movie by saying that, admitting that Scream 4 was terrible and that they wanted to get back to what people liked about the franchise. So I'm happy that they did that with Scream 5. Give it a look. If you like the originals, I think you'll like it. All right. That's my review of Scream 5. Not many or any spoilers in there this time around. So I hope that you enjoyed the review. I will be back soon, within the next week or so, with another review. Now, what I was going to do is alternate, but I'm not sure if I'm going to go straight for Scream 6 or if I'm going to go for another Halloween movie or something else. We'll see. But I will be reviewing Scream 6 coming up this month, so I hope you'll come back to the channel to check that out. If you enjoyed the review, thanks for watching. Remember, please like the video, leave comments, let me know what you thought about Scream 5. All right? Thank you all, and I'll see you soon for another horror movie review.